for coming. You may have noticed that we changed the name of our Black Pine Educational Series. You all received a version of this, either in the mail or email. And if you didn't, we have them up front, and Lauren has those. We do this so our clients would have a better understanding. You guys hear me back there? Mm-hmm. Clients would have a better understanding as to what is the purpose of these monthly events. The real purpose is to see our clients on a monthly basis in a social setting, while providing educational information on various subjects such as real estate, identity theft, tax planning, health planning, market updates, and a lot of other stuff. Lauren and Gina, my wife, recently went over to another top advisor's office in Sarasota and sat in on one of their client events. And these clients were truly engaged, and it became clear as to why. The advisors implemented something called a client love program. Now, you may say, what's a client love program? What exactly is it? It's a way of treating you guys, our elite family members, such as yourself, with more things, and things to keep you engaged, such as Thought for the Week we send out, the weekly updates we send at the beginning of the week, special client events, these educational series. And we're setting up a more, I would call, dedicated love program for everybody here. And it's going to be more consistent. And here's the point. What do I expect from you guys, or what do we expect from you? To be engaged by opening your emails, by reading your emails, by attending events, and possibly bringing friends, if you like. Our relationship is a partnership, and we work hard to keep you informed. So you have a responsibility by keeping yourself informed. Make sense? Okay. Please let Lauren know if you're not receiving the weekly emails. And if one of you are, if your spouse, your wife or husband wants to receive it also, you can. Please. There's no cost to add another person. And you can forward these to your friends. And if you want to give an email to Lauren, she'll forward these to you. As you know, earlier this spring, we brought in 2 new staff members. We brought in Kavita Raju, who's our client service and business transfer specialist, and Dan Nazaninsky, who's our paraplanner. Kavita and Dan work as a team to bring our clients greater customer service. I have the utmost confidence in them, and I want you to have confidence in them as well. I like how they work together. It's really nice. I mentioned the calendar of events. I'm going to point out here that we have a bunch of events coming up, and we have the dates for the rest of the year. So mark your calendar. Attend if you can. We're doing the ones at night here. We also, I get the privilege of teaching at Palm Beach State College again, and we got flyers for it this time. So take some on the way out, hand them to your friends, and say, hey, there's a guy I like, please attend. It's a nice way of getting educated. Now, tonight's speech or presentation on the Client Education Series is by Buying and Selling Real Estate by Chris Cox. Chris Cox works for Douglas Elliman Real Estate and has strong ties to the area. She has the ability to not only understand real estate, but knows how to best communicate between buyer and seller. She's worked with several of our clients, and she's done a great job on both sides of the equation. Also, she told me right before we started, right when I was sitting down, if anybody wants her to give a valuation of your property, what she thinks it could sell for or buy for, if you however you phrase it, she's glad to do that. So just give her your address, or tell me, and I'll give her your address. Fair enough? Unlike free services, complimentary services. That being said, Chris.
I have no voice. And I generally project my voice without a problem.
You can set it up, why?
Well, I have these handouts.
Oh,
There's I think one for everybody, so we'll just do them monthly. Nope. She's in a couple.
No, I guess.
Well,
I just leave it
Oh,
here.
yeah. Got carried away there.
Good job.
And then, these are extras. Lauren, do you want one?
Thank
I might stand up if it helps me. But actually I will. I do better standing. And I need my glasses. And that always, the 20/20 that goes away. First of all, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about my background in Douglas Elliman very quickly. Then I'm gonna start kind of global, go to the county and get more strategic, and then get local and talk about buying and selling your own properties in Palm Beach County and planning those events. And I wanna make sure that when we get to that point, I want that to be the majority of the time, so that it's more of a question, answer, good conversation back and forth. I know we won't be talking about anybody's individual situation necessarily, but we're all of this is pretty much across the board if you're buying or selling any property. When I try to do topics for this talk, I always think, what do I like to know about real estate? And that's how I talk. Well, that's what I talk about. The things that interest me are the things that I pass on. So as Peter said, I'm Chris Cox. I'm a broker associate with Douglas Elliman in Palm Beach. We are soon to open a Jupiter office right there, Jupiter Yacht Club. So, and that is the area that I cover. Palm Beach to Jupiter, Tequesta, and Jupiter Island. I'm married to my childhood sweetheart, and we met in kindergarten. We weren't a couple, but we did get married, and we moved 8 times all over the U.S. So that was from Ohio to Connecticut to Southern Ohio to Southern California, then Nashville, Rochester, upstate New York, Memphis, and here. This is the longest we have been anywhere in our adult married life, and no one is getting us out of here. So every 4 years, I always had to reinvent myself, because I grew up mainly with working in the tire and automotive engineering related fields. And so every 4 years, my husband would move me. And so I was always getting creative, doing different things, and ended up in environmental too and project management. But when I came to Florida, my mother had been in real estate. I had had my real estate license once along the way, and I needed blocks of time rather than, a day here and a day there. And it's been such a wonderful experience in South Florida. I've listed and sold properties from under $100,000 co-ops to multi-million-dollar properties on Palm Beach Island to the tune of over 75 million, and also have done I've done some investment properties, not a lot of investment properties. I usually partner on those types of things if they're of any significance. My husband and I own 2. I just completed 2 years on a new luxury development project on Singer Island, the Dolce Vita. It's an oceanfront condo, and I was instrumental in landing the Scripps contract for Coldwell Banker when I was at Coldwell Banker in my previous life. I'm active at both the local and state level of the Association of Realtors. I'm the 2012 past president of our local association, and I'm currently a Florida Realtors Board of Director. So my goal, my personal goal, which then, follows through to any of the clients that I work with, is to be the most knowledgeable, competent person I can be, and all the way through the transaction process, so that I can be very responsive and on top of all the aspects of the transactions that starts and goes forward. The one thing I want you to keep in mind, no matter when you buy or when you sell, you will be surprised. And for 15 years, I have not gone through one transaction that I haven't learned something new and been surprised by something I never thought I'd see. So, but I just keep that in mind in case something does go wrong. It's normal. Douglas Elliman, it's been around since 1911. It's the #1 real estate firm in New York and the Hamptons. They specialize in high-end real estate, and so they only go to high-end areas. Direct connection, New York City, Hamptons, Southeast Florida. We opened up in Wellington a year and a half ago, about 2 years almost now, #1 in Wellington because of all the horses. We don't realize it, but there's a lot of billionaires out there. There's more billionaires in Wellington now than there are in Palm Beach Island. So it's pretty interesting that it's right here in our backyard. Status of the market. As soon as I get through this stuff, then I want to make sure we're all talking to each other. When I was here in January, I quoted from John Tasillo because he's our statistician at the state level. And what he said about the 2015, 2016 market was dead on. So this was past January. He was predicting 2016, and he was saying that, you know, we were gonna catch our breath this year, it was gonna slow down, and that sales volumes would rise, but at a less hectic pace. And he said that for 2016, we were gonna be between 8 to 10% in the state of Florida. And the paper reported today that we were at 9.95%.
Wow.
So he
What does
could
that
not
mean?
have been more accurate
9% what?
of increase,
Oh,
And-
okay.
and- yeah, increase in the numbers, the home prices. Just so you know, in general, on a normal market, oh, and if you looked at that article today, it showed some of the hot spots, and we were towards the top of those, of the states. Unlike like Ohio and the Midwest and things like that, where things are very slow and not growing. But in general, the market in general grows at 3 to 5% a year in a normal market. So we're still seeing really good growth. But I want you to keep that in mind, because I want to talk about micro markets too. And I want to keep coming back to that, because if you're buying and selling and it's your asset, your primary asset, you need to think about your micro market, about where you live, the houses and the condos that surround your neighborhood. Okay? Then I'm just gonna slip right down here to absorption rate. Because when I was at Florida Realtors this past 2 weeks for the Florida convention, before I had to leave prematurely, I love going to the Florida statistical guys. And he did a really good thing on absorption rate, and we talk about this all the time. But he was talking about gross economics, you know, related to the real estate market, and he was talking about micro markets. And when you are buying or selling a house, you always need to look at your micro market. Meaning, like for instance, I live in Juno Beach in a single family house. What is my absorption rate in Juno Beach of single family homes right in my area? Not what is the market in general doing for Palm Beach County. Because when you get ready to list your house or to purchase a house and you want to determine how to negotiate in to buy, or what you can expect to get out of your property, if it is a buyer's market in your micro market around you, your absorption rate is 11 or more months of inventory. And your realtor can always find that for you. Then if our market is in equilibrium, our inventory is at 6 to 10 months. And if it's a seller's market, we're at 0 to 5 months of inventory. Now granted, when we are at the low end of the market, we're almost always in a seller's market. You know, if we're down around that $200,000 range, and as we climb, the properties, there's fewer buyers and becomes more and more unique, and people are gonna hold on to their properties longer, in general. I always say too, your best protection in Florida is water. Florida is all about water. Can I get to it? Can I see it? Can I be on it? You know, just, they aren't making any more water, so just keep that in mind. In Palm Beach County, status of the market, balance of employment versus housing, this is pretty gonna stay consistent. More companies forecasting to come here, which is good, and there's a lot of people relocating to this area, but it's making affordable housing more and more difficult. Our housing values, even though we took that big dip, they're rising at twice the rate of our wages. So that's gonna be a little bit difficult for people coming in. In this statistic that's on here, I'd like to repeat it because I think it's very sad that our home ownership has slipped from 69.2 to 63.7% in the US. So people are having a harder and harder time to purchase homes for lots of reasons, as you know. Migration, we've got migration coming from all over the place. I think it's interesting. Canadians are still our most active, but their rate of exchange is slowing them down a little bit. We have now, just this past year in 2015, passed New York in population. I think that's pretty cool because they're all kind of sliding south to us. So And the Harris poll in 2015 showed that Florida was one of the most desirable states to live in. So that's all good, positive news. The next thing I put on here was the Knight Frank report. And a lot of you might not be familiar with this, but this is the gold standard of wealth and how it travels around the world. I'm just going to touch on it for a couple of moments because we have a strategic partnership with Knight Frank, and it shows that alternate wealth is going to continue to grow. If we are impacted here in Palm Beach County because we have a lot of ultra high net worth people here, which also generate jobs and opportunities. Obviously, emerging economies, that's where they're going the fastest. But the U.S. is going to continue to be a dominant force into 2024. London is currently the #1 city, but they predict New York to take over that position by 2025. And the U.S. dominates in luxury properties around the world. This is something they started tracking a couple years ago. I think is so cool. They started tracking private jets, and 60% of the private jet traffic goes in and out of the United States. And Palm Beach County is right there in the top 10 here in the U.S. So those are just kind of things I think that are fun to know. Although a lot of us aren't jetting around the world, but it's fun to know where they're, because Palm Beach County is so visible in that arena. I'm not going to go through the next page, which are examples of current development in northern Palm Beach County. I did this a lot in January, but I still think it's a good list to have, and it's not by any means complete. What I want you to know is that this is just the unbelievable, great county with a lot of diversity. We have Palm Beach Island, which is kind of in a time warp. You know, nothing can really expand there. You go in there and you'd be surprised what a small town feel Palm Beach Island truly is. Then you come north to where we are, and we have all this protected space with no large tracts of land to develop anymore. It's pretty cool. We're never going to be Miami, Fort Lauderdale. That's a treasure trove that I don't think a lot of us truly appreciate, and that with the public can get to the beach here. That's amazing. West Palm Beach immediately is turning into a big city beneath, our eyes. And like the Bristol, which is going up now, is going to demand and which we represent, Douglas Hillman, over 1,000 square foot is an entry point to that building. So it's amazing. And you'll notice there's a lot of regentrification going on there, which will impact us up here for housing. And they are doing a lot of things now that they've coined that the financial district and things like that. They are putting permanent development in West Palm Beach. That is important because, it seems like we're always building condos, but not apartments in places where people can live year round, where they're not as seasonal. So they're doing more and more of that. We've got so many lifestyles to choose from here: water, golf, the arts. We have everything but snow. Although we did have that in 1977. just in case you wanted to know, because that was right when I got married. And we came down here and it snowed in Miami. But, so I'm giving you those highlights because I think it's important to know that we have a strong economy that's continuing to grow, which is emphasized here from when I just went to the Business Development Bureau just actually 2 days ago. Kelly Smallbridge is the president, CEO of that organization, and Gary talked that day. But it's key to note that Palm Beach County is not just a location for tourists. The Business Development Board has all of these areas of concentration, and if you start thinking about it, they are really growing and expanding, so we're getting more and more year-round residents that are here, not just when the snow flies. Their goal is to recruit, retain, and expand. So like in agribusiness, you see Florida Crystals. We've had a strong aerospace, aviation. I'm from Akron, Ohio originally. The only reason I'm gonna tell you this story is because most people do not realize the connection between Akron and northern Palm Beach County. The rubber industry was one of the key technology, they were the technology when we were headed to the moon. RCA, Motorola, the rubber companies, Goodrich, who I worked for, built the spacesuits, for example. So there was a lot of people when they opened up, United Tech, Lockheed Martin, and Sikorsky and Pratt Whitney, there was a lot going back and forth between Akron and this area, so we had a lot of friends down here. And those things continue to grow. The aerospace industry specifically does. And you know, the life sciences that they've worked so hard to get and maintain here. Max Planck, it's the only place outside of Europe that they have a destination, that they have a facility. That is just unbelievable. So I just have that there because I think, again, it's another fun thing to think about, because I don't think you think about our county that way necessarily. And I don't know how each one of you got here, whether it was by company or you got ready to retire, so you all bought a second home. I'm not sure what your path was to end up in this county, because we all have a different road. Which brings me to this road, because now I'm on the buying and selling sheets. So this is where the rubber meets the road, and I'm hoping that you're gonna ask questions, and this is gonna turn into a little bit of an open dialogue here. And to set the stage, I wanna remind us that we live in the market. We do not control the market. So just keep that in the back. You know, people are always telling me, well, I want this much for my house. I want this, I have this much I put into my house. And I'm not gonna get that out of it. That's because the market is the market is the market, okay? And that's why those micro markets are critical to you when you're thinking about how you're gonna price, whether you're buying or selling, which leads me to the next thing. How many years do you think it is on average that somebody moves? How many years in between?
5.
Oh, no, a little bit longer than that. 7. 7 years. So so how many of you in the next couple of years are thinking of buying or selling? Okay.
Yeah, pretty much everything.
You're starting to strategically think about it. So that's where I want you to start putting your head as we're going through these things, whatever your personal goals are, whether you're buying, you're selling, you're downsizing, you're upsizing, you're switching lifestyles, whatever you're doing, because, you know, we're all doing it. We're all changing our thought process. Our kids grew up, they move away. Sometimes we want to move to them, sometimes we want to stay. I developed a marketing plan to try and get them to come here. So, you know, we all have different goals and objectives.
How does that work?
So, and again, I'm gonna reiterate, I have no problem coming out and talking to you, whether you're buying or selling right now. I can come out and talk to you about what I think your house is worth today, and you can tell me what you think your goals and objectives are in the short term and the long term, so we can kind of strategize how you would move in that direction. As for instance, let's say you're thinking about putting your house on the market and you're gonna downsize and you're gonna go to maybe a condo locally. A lot of people are afraid to start looking while they still have the house on the market because they don't know how long it's gonna happen. I think it's pretty imperative for you to start putting yourself on an automatic list with your trusted team member, your real estate professional, so that you can start educating yourself about where you're going to. Does that make sense? So if you don't do that and you get a contract on your house or your condo, then all of a sudden you are scared to death. I've got 30, 45 days to be out of here. I have no clue where I'm going. I don't know what I can get for the money I'm going to have. And I'm saying, even if it's 6 months, a year, even if it's projected out over 2 years, it's good to start studying the niche market that you want to move to. Does that make sense? So keep that in mind. I just think it's pretty important to do, because that way when you have to move quickly, you're prepared. I would even spot go to things. They don't know that you're long-term. It helps you, because when you see pictures, luckily pictures are getting better and better. I wanna, point this out, because this is my favorite, all of you have this in there. This is my favorite thing to talk to people about. Because, and especially I noticed this when I sat for 2 years, which reminds me, I think I'm gonna sit for a little bit. When I sat for 2 years on that condo development, is that everybody obviously is searching on the internet, we know that. But look at how big that is, that's 42% just to start, just to start. The reality is that's much higher, I think. Who doesn't start looking for property on the internet? And what happens, and then they start dealing with the real estate professional and they put that together, but that's still using the internet because you're looking at MLS data, photographs, tax data, the whole 9 yards, and it's coming from the internet. What I found working on Singer Island is that a lot of people started grossly looking at the internet like this if they weren't familiar with the area. But then they finally linked to a professional on the ground, okay? And once they linked to the professional on the ground, that's when they could use the internet to fine tune where they were going. Does that make sense?
Narrow the search.
Narrow the search. Because if they're just doing it from the internet and they would show up on our property, they hadn't done enough research to even figure out where they were going. Does that make sense? So you'll find that over time, a lot of these other resources are gonna diminish. Newspaper advertising, really, that's more for me than for you. People aren't going to the newspaper so much.
What percentage of homes are not, if you go to Realtor.com or some MLS access, what percentage of homes are not there?
I can't answer that with the percentage. What I can answer is the base data is entered in our local MLS. And then it is sold as what they call an IDX feed to all those sites. Once that IDX feed goes out, there isn't good control over how often that is updated. And the other thing for any of you that are familiar with data mapping, once you start feeding data, you lose data because it doesn't map to the proper fields when you're going to all these different sites. So the core data here is always going to be your most complete data, your most accurate data.
So, sorry, and a follow-up question. So you're looking locally,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a pretty good idea of the areas you want. Aside from going to a real estate professional, is there a way to access that local MLS, generic MLS?
You can go on the local association site, and there's a public interface. And that would be your best bet. But I don't know if you're searching just within a small area or you're going without, because we also have IDX feeds coming to us, like from Miami, from Broward, that are on different MLSs, from Miami, Broward, and from Martin County, and some of that data is lost.
If a property is listed with a realtor, is it automatically
Yes,
gonna be at least in the feed?
it will be in the feed.
Now, it may or may not get disseminated or diluted to other feeds, but you're saying at least it'll be.
It'll be here. I would say the majority of what you're looking for will be on Realtor.com. But to me, the difficulty is that you cannot search to the detail that you probably want to search to on Realtor.com.
Is the concern that there's properties listed on realestate.com or realtor.com that are no longer
Oh, I don't
listed?
care about that because,
Yeah.
I mean, the way I approach it is I look at price and location.
Mhm.
And my concern is that there are properties that are are on the market but may not be visible to Realtor.com.
I would say the
It's probably a
chances,
small number, but there have to be some.
there could be, but it would be an anomaly. Realtor.com is your best source because that's through the National Association of Realtors and that's through our feed.
It seems pretty reliable. I mean, I haven't found any issues on it. Sometimes you see the same property twice.
Well, oh, that is because it's entered into multiple MLSs. Martin County is a different MLS system than our system. So you have a TX up there and you have an RX down here. If you go, you have an AX in Miami and RX up here. So that's why you see those differences. Also, when I'm searching for property for people, less is more. Because as you're finding, and I think this is kind of part of what you're alluding to, when you're trying to find properties and make sure you do not miss any, I err to the less is more side, entering fewer criteria rather than more, because I'm dependent on the data entry of the realtor that entered the listing. So I was looking for somebody for waterfront the other day, and the listing agent did not check the waterfront checkbox. So that property was missed, is an example, and that's a basic miss. So, you know, your data is only as accurate as your data entry point. So, any other questions on MLS? But the direct MLS is updated continuously. You'll find, even on Realtor.com sometimes, but specifically like on Trulia and Zillow, they don't update. Sometimes things have been sold for a long time and then people will still think they're active and they aren't updated. Okay, so that was, now I'll go back to inventory. Well, the reason I put inventory on here tight and will continue to be set tight, I find people tell me they can't afford to sell because they're still upside down from if they bought towards the peak of the market. And it's difficult if you have to carry money to the table. But let's say you're at least even or a little bit cash flow positive. If you're buying back in this market, don't worry about it because it's apples to apples. Does that make sense? But they always say, when's a good time to buy or sell? And you ask some professionals say now. If you're moving to an area where it's, I don't know how to answer this question because everybody's lifestyle, their goals, their objectives are all different. So that really is a case by case, analyze the situation and figure it out. So I wouldn't want to make any blanket statements. But we bought one investment property right at the peak of the market, and we're still a little upside down on that. We're cash flow positive with the rental, but obviously we're holding because it's an investment property. Now, if I was living in that property, I might make a different decision. Does that kind of illustrate it? Condo versus single family home. How many of you live in condos? We got all single family. How many of you would ever think you would go to a condo?
Never afford. I want to go, I'm ready. Get rid of or wood.
Or would? Well, the thing that I always hear the most when people talk about condos, besides, you know, that they can't do condos because they want their privacy and all that stuff, are the maintenance fees. Think of it this way.
Can I take my dog?
That's always a question. You always want to look, that brings up condo docs. You always want to know, does it meet my lifestyle? You need to very deeply understand the condominium documents, the rules, the regulations, the budgets for the past couple years, if there's any special assessments, if they had reserves, and most importantly, what those fees include. If you ever start looking for a condo, with or without me, always take that maintenance fee, that monthly maintenance fee, divide it by the square foot of the house, find out how many cents or dollars it is per square foot. So let's say it's 31 cents a square foot, or it's $1.10 a square foot. What am I getting for that 37 cents? What am I getting for that $1.10? Sometimes you're getting all kinds of amenities. So I'm gonna use the example of Evergreen. People look at Evergreen, does everybody know where Evergreen is? That little community on Donald Ross, that's a perfect example. People look at those maintenance fees and they go, oh, they're high. And I said, that depends. Do you want a gated community with a guard? They have a guard gate at each end. Do you want your property taken care of, front and backyard? Do you want the outside taken care of? Are you gonna use the clubhouse, the pool, the fitness center, the kids' room, the playroom, the tennis courts? If you're gonna use that stuff, it's cheap. If you aren't, don't go there, because you're wasting your money. But you see that's how you analyze. Get back to a price per square foot and then start figuring out what's in it.
And I also just recently did an analysis of what it costs for me to live in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start adding it up, it's probably cheaper in the long run to be in a house where you have a little more control, but you also don't do a lot of the maintenance that the condos do that help maintain the value of your investment.
Plus, they're getting bulk rates.
Right. And then my follow-up question is, so you're interested in a condo and you want to buy it, you want to make an offer. How do you assess the financial health of the condo association? Is there
First of all, you're gonna have a condos disclosure that's gonna be part of the contract.
okay?
Okay,
That's
and
from
then
the seller or from the
Well,
condo association?
from the seller, but then they will fill in whether there's special assessments and yada, yada, yada. And in there, you're going to, in the monthly maintenance, and then we start talking with the condo association and the management company. You're gonna request multiple years of budgets. You're gonna look to see if they have reserves. You're gonna spend a lot of time talking to the management company to get a good feel for how well that building is run. Because, and then you'll also look at what you were talking about before, if it fits your lifestyle too. Because what if you have a 75-pound dog in there? I'm not gonna let you have that dog there, as an example. But, once you hone in on a specific condo, you're gonna do your due diligence big time to make sure that you're comfortable that what you're buying will not give you any surprises once you close. And this brings me to another term I learned at Florida Realtors, and I just abide by it wholeheartedly. Source to source. I do not want to be the source of information. So if you work with me, I am going to get you to the source. I'm going to guide you in what questions, and you're going to have a whole bunch of additional questions. But I would rather them be answered directly by the source of that information, because you know how it can get lost in translation. The other thing that has always been one of my best things to do when I'm on properties is to when I run into neighbors, I just automatically strike up a conversation with my clients. In the 15 years I've been in the business, I've only had one failure where the woman said everything nasty about the place. But I have not run into any other person that has not given us relevant, solid, good information that has been helpful to the people that I'm working with. Because who better to get information from than the people who live there? So, okay, so we did maintenance fees. Does that kind of answer that? About preparing to sell. When it comes to a listing price, this again, this is a team effort. I'm going to stress this whenever you buy and sell. Your real estate professional and the team that he or she surrounds themselves with, that team of professionals like the handyman, the architect, the contractor, the attorneys, the inspectors, the plumbers, it just, goes on and on and on. And your ability to work with that person to prepare your home properly to sell is huge. You will never see me in a listing presentation. If somebody offers to paint something, you will never hear me say no. The thing that I tell people when they are listing their home is to walk, you're all homeowners, you walk out into the street, you close your eyes, you walk down a few steps, you turn around, you walk back towards your house, and is the best of your ability, pretend you have never, ever been there. Start looking at your property. What do my bushes look like? What's my grass look like? How well is it? Am I mulched? What's my mailbox look like? And most importantly, as you walk up to the step, am I power washed? Do I have mold and mildew? What's my roof look like? And you continue on and you're walking up to the door. What's my door look like? Is it beautiful? Is it mahogany? Is it fiberglass but painted and pristine and everything around it looks neat or not? By the time that person grabs the front doorknob, they have already formed a significant opinion of your house before they even walk in. Believe me, it's critical. They always say the best investment you can do is to your front door. You will always get 100% of your investment back on your front door.
It's just big.
Unless you just put in brand new doors before I got there. But do you see what I'm saying? You have to go back with a critical eye. You have to do that in every single room. And that is, I have a little handout on preparing your house. It's right here. But what I focus on is just 2 words, clean and neat. Does this look clean and neat? Can I, get rid of the clutter, clean and neat. When in doubt, paint. That is your cheapest thing you can do. Clean and neat all the time. Because then it becomes to renovate or not to renovate. And that is always a very difficult decision. I'm in the process of listing a home right now. Beautiful, beautiful home, built in the early 2000s, all original, and a wonderful, wonderful development. There's no reason for them to touch it other than to make sure it's clean and neat. Because no matter what they do to that house, it's not going to be to the taste of the people coming in. So their objective in that particular house is to make it as clean and pristine and show that it has been well maintained for the years that they have owned the house. So that that person, when they turn the doorknob and walk in, they go, oh my gosh, there is pride of ownership here. I know that they have taken care of this home that I might potentially buy, even though I'm going to tear it apart and renovate it. Does that make sense? And if you renovate anything, do it in the most neutral tones you can ever think about. Okay, light and bright. Get ready to show. Drapes up, shades up, lights on. Make sure that when they walk in, everything is lit up like a Christmas tree. Any questions on that from selling? Okay, then,
Yeah, I have a question about that. Are any of those expenses, aside from obvious maintenance that you would do, can you add any of that to your basis for tax purposes? So say you're doing you're basically doing maintenance, but you're doing somewhat of an enhancement. An example would be you put a much more efficient air conditioning compressor and then you have.
now why would you want to add that to your basis? Because then you get hit with the taxes.
No, it's the other way around.
No.
What he's saying, I get
Oh, I see, because you want to,
It lowers my tax, my gain.
because when you sell it, because right now, just, we all know this, well, sorry. If you've been, and you can talk more about this, but if you've been in your house 2 out of 5 years, or one of you's been in there, you've owned it 2 out of 5 years, and you turn around and sell it, first, for an individual, the first $250,000 of gain is exempt from taxes. The next, if it's husband and wife, it's $500,000 of gain is exempt from taxes. But if you have more than that, like let's say you bought a house for $100,000, it's worth $1 million now. So for you, say it's like a $900,000 gain. What you want to do is you want to try to improve your basis.
right now, and I don't understand your question, and you have a real estate tax, you have a tax attorney here, and you can do some of that, but you want to do that with a professional.
The answer is a lot of the stuff can become
I didn't understand your question, but you wanna do that with the professional so it never comes back to get you.
I have my list.
No, nothing wrong with this.
Yeah, they're always good lists, yeah, because you're talking about your capital gains, you wanna reduce your capital gains, yes. Okay, negotiation. When I talk about negotiation, that's part of who you hire as a professional too, you wanna make sure that that professional has had a lot of negotiation skill and can help promote your property in order to get the highest and best price that you can get out of your house. But again, always remembering that we're living in the market, so we aren't controlling the market. So we're working with statistics and trying to enhance those statistics in the best way possible to get the highest dollar, promote your house the best way we can, and sell that to the potential buyer. We have 2 contracts in the state of Florida. Are you familiar with that? I'm just gonna, because like if you go to New York State, attorneys are writing all the contracts, they're all over the place. In the state of Florida, we have 2. We have an as-is contract and a standard contract. Most of the time now we use as-is contracts, but just the key difference to keep in mind is if it's an as-is contract, let's say your house is not in, that you're concerned about your house for a lot of reasons, you would definitely want to do like an as-is contract, so that when they purchase that house, they have a 10 or a 15-day inspection period, and during that time, they do their due diligence. And at any time during that time frame, they can escape from the contract, okay, based on the inspection clause, okay? And then you are not required to fix things necessarily. But if something shows up that nobody planned on, you know, and the inspector's there and says, oh, this air conditioner's about to fail, and you didn't realize it, and now you've got a $10,000 expense that when you put in your offer, you didn't realize was there. Sometimes people will go back and negotiate major things like that, but not minor things, okay? And a lot of times, something might show up in an inspection that's a surprise to both parties. So that's an escape clause for the buyer, so keep that in mind. On a standard contract, both buyer and seller are locked into the contract. Oh, and I need to do my disclaimer at this point. I am not an attorney, so I'm not giving you legal advice, okay? But that's one of the other things that I track very well. I go to the Florida, the Realtor Attorney Committee of Florida, because no matter how many times I go through that contract, there's always something new. But in the standard contract, which is not used as often now, it requires, based on the inspection, and there's a list of things that the inspector's looking for, which are major mechanicals and things like that. They're really working things, not the color of the paint, that type of thing. The homeowner is going to be responsible to repair and or replace up to 1.5% of the purchase price of the house to repair those items. And also for wood destroying organisms, which can be mold or termites or, you know, whatever. So I just want you to understand the difference between those two. So with the standard, remember, you're both locked in, so no one can escape. On the as-is, they can escape in that 15-day time frame. Just so you're aware of that. And then through the rest of the negotiation process, I think it's important to know that it doesn't end. Besides you get to the contract, there are so many steps when you're going through that closing process. And that's where a lot of the surprises occur. I'm going to tell a funny story because I think it is pretty hilarious. You know, most of you have a homestead exemption, right? If you're here full time, or you're claiming it as your primary. So I worked with a client for 5 years, single man. Every time I was with him, he was with a different woman. 5 years go by, I sell his property. We are within 24 hours of closing. It's his homestead. But I never ask him because he never mentions his wife. I always see him with a different woman for 5 years. Day before closing, his wife is now saying she's going to blackmail him because for $10,000 to get her signature on that closing document. So I just think that's a funny story, but would you ever, I mean, there's so many, I'm bringing it up because no matter how you plan, you're gonna get blindsided with something. Just this week, I'm working on a contract for a little tiny property up in Stewart. 155,000, it's in a condo, 55 plus. The couple is from the Virgin Islands and they want to finance 100,000 of it. And they go on the internet and they have found this great guy. He is a great guy. I talked to him, he's a great guy. He's from Michigan with Quicken Loans. And so I tell him, do you realize that, I didn't say it that way. I said, but I'm going to give you the name of several other local people. Because when it comes to the condo market in Florida and the housing market, it can be very tricky in Florida to transfer property, especially if you're touching a condo. You need to work with local bankers, local brokers that know this market inside and out and can deal in private lending because most of them will not qualify for Fannie Mae. And the reason I'm telling this story because this just happened last night. They kept working with him and he was calling me because this is the loan officer and he thinks he can do everything. Good guy. But I kept asking him, you know, this is the condo, older condo, 55 plus, and you're sure you can do it? Yes, yes, yes. And so then I get an email from my clients this morning that says they were on the phone an hour and a half with him last night and he cannot do the loan on that property. And I said, thank God, because normally if you know the process, that's why a mortgage thing is always good. If you know the process, the loan officer, especially when he's not local, can be excellent. But you know, all these details, he's collecting the data, telling you what he needs because he's got a checklist, right? And he's keeping up with your paperwork the whole time. He's collecting, and then he hands it off to the underwriter. He has no control over the underwriter. Now the underwriter gets it, and it's towards the end of the process. You have 10 days to close. And now the underwriter is calling you with all this additional documentation. And at the underwriter stage, it's generally where it's discovered that they cannot fund this condo.
So how do you avoid that if you're with a lender, say maybe where they financed your house before, and they have your current mortgage?
Well, you said you were in a house, generally house to house. It's not as bad.
Okay, so well, what if you're purchasing a condo?
If you're purchasing a condo, and I like to work with direct lenders. I like to work with people that, so I'm just going to toss out a bank's name. There's many more of them. Like, for instance.
Before you do,
Yeah.
what we found, I apologize.
No, because that's a good point.
Yeah, it's, what we're going to do is, she's gonna throw it out to you, but we gotta,
Oh, it's 7 o'clock.
yeah, 7 o'clock.
Shoot. Okay.
She'll get back to you.
Okay. But there's a lot to it. That's I guess all we really need to know at this point. If you're planning to buy, we've talked through this a little bit, determine your lifestyle. Because we have so many good lifestyles, and that becomes a very difficult choice. Determine your tolerance for renovations and where your location is. I'm not going to talk about investment properties, cash versus financing. I talked a little bit about that already. The one thing that I do want to mention is that underwriting is a painful process. Darren mentioned that. We went through refi. We were getting an equity line of credit just to have it. It was worth 1/3 the cost of our home, which is totally paid off. My husband and I, even though I knew it was going to be painful, we almost quit. It was so bad. So just be prepared. As Darren is seconded.
Yeah.
And with this new Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, the CFPB stuff, it makes it a little bit even more complicated. And if something blows up, then they have all these timelines, so your closing can get delayed further. So you should just, so Again, just, and, like I said, I always have a surprise in every transaction. Remember that you're a team. You need to surround yourself with a team when you're buying and selling, somebody that you can trust and somebody that you can know that you can get to all the resources you need to get to where you're going. And again, I offer to help you in any way I can, strategize and evaluate where you are.
So now, we have a couple minutes for questions. Yeah.
Get it back.
So as far as questions go, feel free to ask anything you like. We have an expert here on real estate, buying and selling. Want to know where to live? She'll tell you. Want to know what type of properties to buy? She'll tell you. Want to tell you how to get out of a property? She'll tell you. But I'm open to any questions. Is that okay?
You see the market still going up? Because like in 2005, 2006, 2007, when it capped out, obviously everything bubbled and everybody lost it. Lots and lots of money on their real estate or whatever. We see it continuing to rise up in the near future.
I want to go defer that back to getting my statistician to predict the future. But
It's,
my own
it's tough.
personal opinion is that we will continue to move forward unless something dramatic happens to the economy as a whole. Because there was a lot of, there is a growth on the business side as well as the tourism side. So I see it still heading in a positive direction until something happens, which you will know through Peter, that the economy is doing something. And if you look at that list, which I think is pretty cool, it's a pretty good diversified economic base they're going for, which is always good. Because one of the places we lived was in Nashville. And they have such a good, diverse economic base there that if something goes down, something else is up.
Right.
So they never see this.
Need more roads.
Yes, they do. My daughter still lives there. Any other questions?
One more question, and we're cutting you off. Yes.
With all of the developments that are in the pipeline at this point, you said we're not going to be Fort Lauderdale, but it's beginning to look like Fort Lauderdale. I mean, PGA Boulevard is getting to be harder and harder to maneuver, and so are some of the side streets like North Lake and others. I'm somewhat worried about the overbuilding and over congestion. Even with the Marcus Park and other things that are the green space that is saved, I'm just afraid we're going to turn this into an urban area.
It's going to get busier. There's no doubt about that. But what I meant by that was there are no large tracts of land. So we're going to see the stuff that's planned and the few small areas that are left to develop. But after that, there's nowhere to go. So I'm not saying it's going to stay. It's going to get worse. But if you go to Miami and you want to go a mile, you need to plan an hour. So, and I'm not as familiar with being in Fort Lauderdale, but I am with to get to Boca, and it's nothing like up here. Nothing, not even close. But it's painful, and especially as they say, the leaves are changing. Our license plate colors are changing. So it's fall. We're gonna have a lot more traffic.
So I guess what you're saying is that with the increase of property and property prices still going up, and still some building, we're seeing people come down here, so we're gonna see more congestion.
Yeah, there's no way around it. Plus, remember, private property rights, when somebody owns land, they have the right to develop it. So it's always going to be a struggle for what you're talking about and the person that owns the land and wants to develop it. So we're going to be fighting about it forever.
Well, I want to thank you, Chris. I want to thank you for speaking. That was excellent. Good job.